Have you ever held on to something so tightly that you forgot the whole point was to eventually let it go? Well, hello there, my dear friends. Come on over here and settle yourself into that comfortable spot where we can share some time together. I'm Joe, though most folks these days know me as Grandpa Joe, and I'm so grateful you've chosen to spend part of your day with me here in our little corner of reflection and storytelling. You know, at 6th, I've come to understand that some of life's most profound lessons come wrapped in the most ordinary moments. I want to share with you a story that began on a simple Saturday morning in 1990 when my son Tommy was 6 years old and I was 30, being convinced I knew everything there was to know about being a father. And it's a story about a bicycle, about running until your lungs burned, about the terrifying moment when you realize your job isn't to hold on forever. It's to know exactly when to let go. But more than that, it's a story about discovering what true pride really feels like, about learning that watching your child succeed without you might just be parenthood's greatest reward and life's most beautiful heartbreak, and all rolled into one moment that changes everything you thought you knew about love. If these conversations we share bring you comfort during quiet moments, perhaps remind you of your own parenting journeys, or simply provide a friendly voice when the world feels too fast and complicated, I would be deeply honored if you'd consider joining our little community here. Your presence tells me that these stories matter, that the lessons we've learned through decades of living have genuine value for others walking similar paths. Now, let me take you back to a time that feels both like yesterday and an entire lifetime ago. A warm spring morning when the air smelled of fresh-cut grass and possibility. When I thought I had figured out the delicate balance of being a father. And when I was about to learn that sometimes the greatest act of love is the hardest thing you'll ever have to do. Or if you will, a young father standing in his driveway at 7 in the morning, holding a cup of coffee and watching his 6-year-old son through the kitchen window. That little boy was examining a bright red bicycle with the kind of intense concentration that children bring to the mysteries of the world, running his small hands along the frame like he was trying to understand its secrets through touch alone. That bicycle had been sitting in our garage for 3 months. A birthday present that had filled Tommy with equal measures of excitement and terror. You see, all of his friends had been riding bikes for over a year, effortlessly gliding through the neighborhood like they'd been born with wheels instead of feet. But Tommy, my sensitive, thoughtful, careful little boy, had approached this milestone with the kind of caution that made perfect sense to him, but filled me with a father's worry about whether I was doing something wrong. For ways, he'd asked me to help him learn. And for weeks, I'd found excuses. I was busy with work, or the weather wasn't quite right, or we needed to check the tire pressure first, or maybe we should wait until his mother could watch. The truth was, I was terrified, not of him getting hurt exactly but of failing him in some fundamental way that would matter for the rest of his life. You see, my own father had never taught me to ride a bike. He'd been too busy working double shifts at the factory, too tired when he came home, too overwhelmed by the weight of providing for a family during times when every dollar counted. I'd learned on my own, through trial and error, and more scraped knees than I care to remember, figuring it out in the solitary way that children do when they have no choice but to be their own teachers. I'd promised myself that when I became a father, things would be different. I would be present. I would be patient. I would be the kind of dad who taught his son to ride a bike with wisdom and encouragement, creating one of those golden memories that would last a lifetime. But here I was, 3 months after that birthday, still finding reasons to postpone what should have been a simple father-son moment. That morning, though, something was different. Maybe it was the way Tommy had looked at me over breakfast, with eyes that held both hope and resignation, as if he was beginning to accept that this might be something he'd have to figure out on his own. Maybe it was the beautiful weather that made excuses seem petty and small, or maybe it was simply that moment when you realize that waiting for the perfect time means the perfect time never come. "Tommy," I called through the window, my voice carrying that particular tone, parents use when they're about to suggest something that scares them more than it scares their children. What do you say we give that bike a try this morning? The transformation on his face was immediate and complete. Eyes widening, mouth opening in a smile so bright it could have powered the whole neighborhood. He ran to the kitchen door, bouncing on his toes with an energy that reminded me why children approach new challenges with such pure enthusiasm before the world teaches them to be afraid. Really? Dad? Today? Oh, right now? And there it was. That moment when you realize you've just committed yourself to something that will require you to be braver and more patient than you've ever been before. When you understand that your child's confidence is about to be placed entirely in your hands. I spent the next 20 minutes in what I can only describe as preparation panic. Unchecked the tire pressure twice, adjusted the seat height 3 times, tested the brakes repeatedly, and cleaned dirt off the frame that was barely visible. Tommy watched all of this with the kind of patient amusement that children show when they realize their parents are more nervous about something than they are. Is it ready now? Dad? He asked for the 4th time, his small hands gripping the handlebars with determination that made my heart swell and break simultaneously. The truth was, the bike had been ready from the moment we had assembled it 3 months earlier. What hadn't been ready was me, the father who was about to discover that teaching your child something new requires you to confront every insecurity you have about your own abilities. Every fear about whether you're qualified to guide another human being through the challenges of learning and growing. But looking at Tommy's eager face, seeing the trust he placed in me so completely and naturally, I realized that being ready wasn't the point. Being willing was the point. Being present was the point. Understanding that your child needs you to try, even when you're not sure you know what you're doing, was the point. Let's start with you just sitting on the bike, I said, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. We'll keep both feet on the ground for now. Just get used to how it feels. Tommy climbed onto the seat with the careful deliberation of someone approaching something both exciting and slightly dangerous. His feet barely touched the ground, even with the seat at its lowest setting, and I made a mental note to check whether we should have bought a smaller bike, but he gripped the handlebars with fierce determination, and I could see him imagining himself gliding down the street with the freedom that comes from mastering something that had once seemed impossible. This feels good, Steve, he said, his voice carrying a mix of excitement and nervousness that every parent recognizes. The sound of a child standing at the edge of something new and wonderful and slightly scary. You look like a natural, I told him, and meant it. There was something about the way he held himself on that bike. A sense of belonging that suggested this was just a matter of time and practice rather than some insurmountable challenge. We spent the first 15 minutes just walking around the driveway with me holding the back of the seat while Tommy got used to the feeling of sitting on the bike, steering gently left and right, learning how the handlebars responded to his movements. It was peaceful and comfortable, and I found myself thinking that maybe this wouldn't be as difficult as I'd imagined. I was wrong. Of course, teaching someone to ride a bike isn't really about the sitting or the steering. It's about that terrifying moment when physics and balance and confidence all have to come together at once. When your child has to trust that the laws of motion will keep them upright while they learn to trust themselves. I think I'm ready to try pedaling, Tommy announced with the kind of confidence that children can summon when they're convinced their parents have magical powers to keep them safe. My stomach tightened, but I nodded and moved to position myself behind the bike. One hand on the seat, the other on the back of his shirt. I'm gonna hold on the whole time, I promised. You just focus on pedaling and steering. I've got you. Tommy pushed off with his right foot and began to pedal, and immediately I understood why I'd been so nervous about this moment. The bike lurched forward with surprising speed, and suddenly I was jogging beside it, trying to maintain my grip while keeping pace with a 6-year-old who was discovering that bicycles move much faster than walking children. I'm doing it, Tommy shouted, his voice filled with the kind of pure joy that makes every difficulty worthwhile. I'm really doing it. And he was. Sort of. He was pedaling and steering, and the bike was moving forward in approximately the right direction. But what he couldn't see, and what I was learning with every step, was how much work I was doing to keep him upright. My hand on the seat was constantly adjusting his balance, preventing the small wobbles from becoming crashes, compensating for his uncertain steering. That we made it to the end of the driveway, and Tommy turned to me with a grin so wide it seemed to take up his entire face. That was amazing. Did you see me riding? I had seen him riding, and I had also felt every moment of uncertainty, every small correction, every instant when the bike might have tipped over if I hadn't been there to steady it. And the gap between his perception of what had happened and the reality of how much support he'd needed was both endearing and concerning. You did great, I told him, and meant it. Should we try again? For the next hour, we repeated this process. Tommy would pedal enthusiastically down the driveway while I jogged beside him, one hand on the seat, making constant tiny adjustments to keep him balanced. He was getting more confident with each trip, his steering becoming more sure, his pedaling more smooth. But he was also getting more confident in my ability to keep him safe, which meant he was taking bigger risks, leaning into turns more sharply, pedaling faster. By the end of that first session, I was exhausted. My back ached from bending over to reach the bike seat. My legs burned from trying to keep up with an increasingly confident 6-year-old. And my hands were cramping from gripping the seat so tightly, but Tommy was glowing with accomplishment, convinced that he was on the verge of mastering this new skill. Tomorrow we'll do it again. Right, Dad? He asked as we wheeled the bike back into the garage. Absolutely, I promised, already dreading and anticipating the next session in equal measure. That night, as Patricia and I sat on the porch after Tommy had gone to bed, I found myself reflecting on what had happened that day. I don't think I'm very good at this, I confessed to my wife. He thinks he's riding, but I'm basically carrying the bike. Oh, so I don't know how to help him make the transition to actual balancing on his own. Patricia, wise woman that she was, smiled in that way she had when she understood something I hadn't figured out yet. Maybe the point isn't to figure it all out at once, she said. Maybe it's just to show up every day and do your best, and trust that eventually something will click. Her words stayed with me as I fell asleep that night, and they came back to me the next morning when Tommy appeared at breakfast, already dressed and ready for another bike lesson. The enthusiasm was still there, but I could also see something new in his eyes, a flicker of frustration that suggested he was beginning to understand that this was going to be harder than he'd initially thought. Are you ready for day 2? I asked, trying to project more confidence than I felt. I think today I might be able to do it without you holding on, he said. And my heart sank a little, because I knew he wasn't ready for that yet. And I knew that explaining why was going to be one of those delicate parenting moments where you have to balance honesty with encouragement. We'll see how it goes when it's which was parent code for absolutely not. But I don't want to crush your enthusiasm. Day 2 was harder than day 1, partly because Tommy was more confident and therefore more likely to take risks, and partly because I was more aware of how much work I was doing to keep him upright. Every time he suggested that maybe I could let go, I found myself making excuses. Let's just practice a little more. Or I want to make sure you're really comfortable first. The truth was, I was terrified of that moment when I would have to let go. Not because I thought he would get seriously hurt. We were only going about 5 miles per hour, and he was wearing a helmet and knee pads. But because I was afraid of failing him, and I was afraid that I'd let go too soon and he'd crash and lose confidence. I was afraid that I'd wait too long and he'd become dependent on my support in a way that would make learning to balance on his own even harder. But more than anything, I was afraid of that moment when I would have to trust that all the foundation we were building would be enough. When I would have to believe that Tommy could do something I wasn't sure I could do myself if I had to start over. Day 3 brought rain. which gave me a reprieve I was both grateful for and guilty about. Day 4 was my excuse about needing to mow the lawn first. Day 5 was Sunday, and Sunday was family day, not bike lesson day. By Monday morning, I could see in Tommy's eyes that he was beginning to wonder whether his dad really believed he could learn to ride a bike, or whether I was just going through the motions to make him feel better. "Dad," he said over breakfast, his voice carrying a seriousness that 6-year-olds shouldn't have to summon. "I really want to learn to ride my bike. My friends are all riding to the park without me, and I want to go with them." And there it was, the moment when your child's need for independence collides with your need to protect them. When you realize that your fear of letting go is starting to hold them back instead of keeping them safe. "You're right," I said, surprising both of us. "Today we're going to focus on you riding on your own." That afternoon, as we walked the bike out to the driveway, I found myself making a mental promise. Was that I would be braver than I felt, that I would trust Tommy's ability to learn even if I wasn't sure I trusted my ability to teach. And "Today feels different, Ed," Tommy said. And he was right. There was something in the air between us, a sense that we were both approaching this challenge with new determination. I positioned myself behind the bike as usual, but this time I explained what we were going to do differently. "I'm still going to hold on at first," I told him, "but I want you to really focus on finding your balance. Feel how the bike wants to stay upright when you're moving forward, and trust that it will support you." Jimmy nodded seriously, and I could see him processing this information in the careful way he approached new concepts. So he pushed off and began pedaling. And I jogged beside him as usual, my hand on the seat. But this time, instead of holding tightly, I gradually loosened my grip, letting him feel more of the bike's natural movement. "I can feel it," he said after our first run. "I can feel how it wants to balance." "That's exactly right," I told him, my heart racing with the realization that he was beginning to understand something fundamental about physics and confidence that I couldn't teach him directly. He had to discover it for himself. But on our second run, I loosened my grip even more, sometimes barely touching the seat, letting him experience longer moments of independent balance. He wobbled more, but he also corrected more, his body learning to respond to the bike's movement instead of relying on my steadying hand. "Dad, I think I'm starting to get it," he said, his voice filled with a different kind of excitement, not just the thrill of speed, but the deeper satisfaction that comes from feeling yourself master something new. By our fourth run, I was barely touching the seat at all, just keeping my hand near it for reassurance. His and mine. Tommy was riding, really riding, for stretches of 10 or 15 feet at a time before needing correction. His confidence was building with each successful moment, and I could see him beginning to trust both the bike and himself. And then came the moment that every parent who has taught their child to ride a bike remembers forever. We were halfway down the driveway, Tommy pedaling with more confidence than ever before. When I realized that my hand was no longer touching the seat at all, I was just jogging beside him, watching him balance and steer and succeed completely on his own. And he didn't even know it. For about 20 feet, I ran beside my son as he rode his bike independently for the first time. Both of us caught in that magical space between knowing and not knowing, between dependence and independence, between one stage of childhood and the next. "Tommy," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. "Look at you, you're riding all by yourself." He glanced over at me, still pedaling, and it took him a moment to process what he was seeing, that I was several feet away from the bike, that he was staying upright through his own balance and skill, that he was actually, truly, completely riding a bicycle. "I'm doing it," he shouted, his voice carrying a mixture of amazement, pride, and pure joy that I can still hear clearly 30 years later. "I'm really doing it." And then, because he was 6 years old and had just realized he was doing something he thought was impossible, He started laughing, not just giggling, but the kind of deep, full-body laughter that comes from the overwhelming happiness of achievement. The sound filled our driveway and spilled over into the neighborhood, announcing to anyone within earshot that something wonderful was happening. He rode all the way to the end of the driveway, made a careful turn, and rode back toward me. His face glowing with the kind of confidence that comes from discovering you're capable of more than you knew. When he finally stopped, he jumped off the bike and ran to me, throwing his arms around my waist with a hug that conveyed everything words couldn't capture. "I did it. Dad, I really did it. Did you see me riding all by myself?" I told him, my voice thick with emotions I was only beginning to understand. I saw every second of it, and it was absolutely perfect. What I didn't tell him in that moment, what I couldn't have put into words then, was what I had really seen. I had seen my son transform from someone who needed my support to someone who could support himself. I had witnessed the exact moment when dependence became independence, when fear became confidence, when a child took a step toward becoming the person he was meant to be. But more than that, I had discovered something about fatherhood that no book or class or piece of advice had prepared me for. I had learned that true parental pride doesn't come from your child's dependence on you. It comes from their ability to succeed without you. The greatest gift you can give your child isn't your constant support, but your faith in their ability to support themselves. Ending there in our driveway, watching Tommy examine his bike with new appreciation for what it represented, I felt a complex mixture of emotions that would take me years to fully understand. And there was pride, certainly, and joy, and relief that the lesson had gone so well. But there was also something else, something bittersweet and profound that I would later recognize as my first real glimpse into the fundamental paradox of parenting. Your job as a parent is to make yourself unnecessary. Every skill you teach your child, every confidence you help them build, every challenge you guide them through is designed to help them need you less. And the success of your parenting is measured not by how much your child depends on you, but by how well they can thrive without you. And in that moment, watching Tommy ride his bike with growing confidence, I understood that I had just participated in something much larger than a simple childhood milestone. And I had been part of the endless, beautiful, heartbreaking process of raising a child who would eventually need to make their way in the world without me. For the following weeks, Tommy's bike riding improved rapidly. He went from tentative rides up and down our driveway to confident expeditions around the block. He learned to start and stop smoothly, to navigate around obstacles, to ride alongside his friends with the casual competence that makes childhood look effortless from the outside. But for me, the lesson was just beginning. I started noticing all the ways that parenting involved this same pattern of providing support until it was no longer needed, of holding on until it was time to let go, of teaching skills that would eventually make your guidance unnecessary. And when Tommy struggled with homework, I learned to help him understand the concept rather than simply giving him the answers. Then when he had conflicts with friends, I guided him toward resolution rather than solving the problems for him. And when he faced new challenges, learning to swim, trying out for sports teams, navigating the social complexities of elementary school, I found myself applying the same principle I'd learned that day with the bicycle. Provide support when it's needed. Build confidence gradually. And then, when the moment is right, let go and trust. Trust that the foundation you've built together will be enough. This wasn't always easy. There were many times when it would have been simpler to just hold on, to continue providing the support that made both of us feel safer. But I had learned something important about the difference between protecting your child and preparing your child, between keeping them safe and teaching them to keep themselves safe. As Tommy grew older, the challenges became more complex, but the principle remained the same. And when he wanted to walk to school alone, when he asked for more independence with friends, when he started showing interest in activities that didn't require parental supervision, I found myself drawing on the lesson of the bicycle. The hardest part wasn't teaching him the skills he needed, It was learning to trust that he could use those skills wisely when I wasn't there to guide him. It was accepting that making mistakes was part of learning, that my job wasn't to prevent all problems, but to help him develop the judgment and resilience to handle problems when they arose. By the time Tommy reached middle school, he was facing challenges that were far more complex than learning to balance on a bicycle. Emotional dynamics, academic pressure, the beginning stirrings of adolescence. All of these required a more sophisticated version of the support and release pattern I'd learned during those bike riding lessons. But the fundamental principle remained true. My job was to provide guidance and support while gradually increasing his independence, to be available when he needed help while encouraging him to develop confidence in his own abilities. And there were times when this was extraordinarily difficult. So when he made poor choices, when he struggled with challenges that I could easily solve for him, when he seemed to be heading toward mistakes that I could see coming from miles away, the temptation to intervene, to grab the metaphorical bike seat and steady his course, was sometimes overwhelming. But I had learned that afternoon in our driveway that holding on too long can be just as harmful as letting go too soon. Children need to experience the natural consequences of their choices in order to develop good judgment. They need to face challenges that stretch their abilities in order to build confidence. And they need to succeed independently in order to truly believe in themselves. This didn't mean abandoning him to figure everything out alone. Just as I had run beside the bike, ready to provide support if needed, I remained available to Tommy as he navigated increasingly complex challenges, but I learned to distinguish between the times when intervention was necessary for safety and the times when stepping back was necessary for growth. And the teenage years brought this lesson into even sharper focus. Tommy was dealing with academic pressure and social relationships, part-time boss on this job, college preparation, and all while figuring out who he was becoming as a young adult. My role evolved from active teacher to available consultant, from problem solver to advisor. There were moments during those years when I questioned whether I was being too hands-off, whether I should be more involved in guiding his decisions. But then I would remember that moment when I realized he was riding the bike on his own. The pride in his voice when he discovered he could do something he'd thought was impossible. And I would remind myself that my goal was to raise someone who could navigate life's challenges independently. This approach was tested most significantly during Tommy's senior year of high school, when he was choosing a college. He had been accepted to several schools, including one that Patricia and I thought would be perfect for him, close to home, strong in his area of interest, within our budget. But Tommy was drawn to a different school, one that was farther away, more expensive, and frankly, not our first choice. Every parental instinct I had wanted to steer him toward what we thought was the better decision. We knew more about the world, about finances, about the practical considerations he wasn't fully factoring into his choice. And it would have been easy to apply pressure, to point out all the advantages of our preferred option, to influence his decision in the direction we thought was best. But sitting at the kitchen table one evening, watching Tommy carefully compare his options, weighing the pros and cons with the kind of thoughtful consideration that showed how much he'd matured since that day with the bicycle, I realized that this was another moment when I needed to let go. "What are you thinking?" I asked him, genuinely curious about his perspective rather than trying to guide him toward a particular conclusion. "I know you and Mom think State University makes more sense," he said, showing that he understood our preferences even though we'd tried to be subtle about them. "And you're probably right about the practical stuff, but something about Riverside feels right to me, and I can't explain it exactly. But when I visited there, I could see that myself becoming the person I want to be." There it was, that same intuitive wisdom he'd shown when he was ready to take the training wheels off. When he'd known he was ready to try riding without my hand on the seat. He was trusting something deeper than pure logic. Something that combined practical considerations with his own sense of what would challenge him to grow in the right direction. "Then I think you should choose Riverside," I told him, and meant it. "Your mother and I will figure out the financial part. What matters most is that you choose the place where you think you can thrive. The look of relief and gratitude on his face reminded me exactly of that moment when he'd realized he was riding the bike on his own. The same mixture of surprise and joy that comes from discovering that the people who love you trust your ability to make good decisions. Tommy did choose Riverside, and it turned out to be exactly the right decision for him. And he thrived there academically and socially, developed interests and abilities we never could have predicted, and graduated with the confidence and direction that clearly came from knowing he had navigated those 4 years according to his own best judgment. But more importantly, he had learned something about making decisions that would serve him throughout his life. He had experienced the process of weighing options, trusting his instincts, and taking responsibility for the consequences. He had discovered that he could make good choices independently, which gave him the confidence to continue making good choices as he faced increasingly complex decisions in adulthood. Now, as I write this at 65, Tommy is 36 years old with children of his own. I've watched him become the kind of father who provides support without creating dependence, who teaches skills while building confidence, who knows when to hold on and when to let go. And I've had the profound joy of seeing how the lessons we learned together during those bike riding sessions have rippled through generations. Last month, I had the privilege of watching Tommy teach his own 6-year-old daughter, Emma, to ride a bike. Standing in his driveway, watching him run beside her with his hand hovering near the seat, I felt the sweet completion of a circle that began 30 years ago when a nervous young father decided it was time to stop making excuses and start teaching. "Is she ready for you to let go?" I asked him as Emma completed another successful lap with his minimal support. Tommy smiled, and I could see in his expression the same mixture of pride and terror I had felt all those years ago. "Well, I think so," he said. "But letting go is always the hardest part, isn't it?" "Always," I agreed, Asha. "But it's also the most important part." And as I watched my son prepare to give his daughter that same gift of independent achievement, I was reminded once again that the lessons we learn as parents continue to unfold and deepen throughout our lives. The day I let go of Tommy's bike seat wasn't just about teaching him to ride. It was about learning one of the fundamental principles that would guide me through every stage of fatherhood and every relationship that followed. My friends, as I've grown older and gained the perspective that comes with time and experience, I've come to understand that this lesson about knowing when to let go extends far beyond parenting. It applies to every relationship, every role, every stage of life where we find ourselves responsible for supporting others or holding on to something that once served us but may no longer be necessary. In my years as a teacher, I learned to apply the same principle with my students. My job wasn't to make them dependent on my knowledge, but to help them develop their own ability to learn, to question, to discover. The most successful students were the ones who eventually needed me less, who could approach new subjects with confidence and curiosity rather than waiting for someone to tell them what to think. In my marriage to Patricia, I've learned that love sometimes means stepping back to let the other person grow, even when that growth takes them in directions you might not have chosen. And supporting your spouse doesn't mean solving all their problems or making all their decisions easier. It means being there when they need you while giving them the space to become the person they're meant to be. And now, in these later years of my life, I'm learning to apply this lesson to myself and my own aging process. And there are abilities I once had that I'm having to let go of, roles that once defined me that are evolving into something different. And just as I had to learn when to let go of Tommy's bike seat, I'm learning when to let go of outdated self-images and accept the natural transitions that come with growing older. This doesn't mean giving up or becoming passive. It means understanding the difference between holding on to things that serve you and clinging to things that no longer fit who you're becoming. It means trusting that the foundation you've built over decades of living will support you through whatever changes lie ahead. I think about the friends I've known who've struggled with retirement, who couldn't let go of their professional identities even when it was time to discover new sources of meaning and purpose. I think about parents who couldn't adjust their relationships with their adult children, who continued trying to solve problems and give advice in ways that created tension rather than connection. And I think about the people I've known who've navigated these transitions gracefully, who've understood that letting go isn't about losing something, it's about making space for something new to emerge. They've discovered that the skills and wisdom they developed in one stage of life can be applied in different ways in the next stage. That ending one chapter doesn't diminish the value of what came before. The bicycle lesson taught me that true pride comes not from being needed, but from watching others thrive independently. And as I've gotten older, I've found that this same principle applies to the satisfaction of aging well. And the deepest fulfillment doesn't come from clinging to past achievements or trying to maintain roles that no longer fit. It comes from watching the positive effects of your life's work continue to ripple outward, even when you're no longer actively involved. And I see this in the students I taught who've gone on to become teachers themselves, passing on not just information, but the love of learning that we discovered together. I see it in the community organizations I was involved with that continue to thrive and grow, guided by principles we established together, but no longer dependent on my active leadership. And most of all, I see it in Tommy and the kind of father, husband, and citizen he's become. The values we taught him are the confidence he gained from learning to overcome challenges independently. The understanding that true strength comes from knowing when to ask for help and when to provide it. All of these continue to shape his life and the lives of his children in ways that have nothing to do with my ongoing involvement. This is what I've come to understand is the true measure of a life well lived. Not how much control you maintain or how many people continue to need you, but how much good continues to happen because of the foundation you helped build, the people you helped strengthen, the love and wisdom you've shared that continues to multiply even after you step back from active involvement. But let me be clear about something important. My dear friends, learning when to let go doesn't mean becoming disconnected or uninvolved. Yet just as I continued to run beside Tommy's bike, even after I let go of the seat, staying available in case he needed support, there are ways to remain present and helpful in the lives of people you care about without overstepping boundaries or creating dependence. The art is in learning to distinguish between the support that helps people grow and the support that prevents them from growing. It's understanding when your involvement is genuinely helpful and when it's primarily serving your own need to feel needed. It's recognizing that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is trust someone else's ability to handle their own challenges. In my relationship with Tommy now, I've learned to wait for him to ask for advice rather than offering it unsolicited. When he does ask, I try to share my perspective without insisting that he follow it. I stay informed about what's happening in his life without needing to be involved in every decision, but I remain available for support while respecting his autonomy as an adult. This has created a relationship that's much richer and more satisfying than it would be if I were still trying to guide his life the way I did when he was learning to ride a bike. Now we can have conversations as equals, sharing our different perspectives and experiences without the tension that comes from one person trying to control or fix the other. The same principle has applied to my relationships with my grandchildren, and I can share my knowledge and experience with them. But I have to remember that their parents are the primary guides in their lives. We have a role to support and supplement, not to override or compete. When Emma was learning to ride her bike, I was able to offer encouragement and share stories about her father's experience. But I had to trust Tommy to make the decisions about timing and technique. This restraint has allowed me to develop relationships with my grandchildren that are special precisely because they are not burdened with the responsibility of primary parenting. When I can be the grandfather who listens to their problems without having to solve them, who celebrates their achievements without taking credit for them, who provides unconditional love without the complications that come from being responsible for discipline and guidance. I've found that this approach has made me more rather than less valuable in their lives. Because they know I'm not trying to control or fix them, they're more likely to share what's really happening with them, because they trust that I respect their autonomy. They're more open to my perspective when they do ask for it. As I reflect on these lessons now, in my mid-60s, I'm beginning to apply them to my own aging process in ways that feel both challenging and liberating, learning to let go of some of the physical capabilities I once took for granted without mourning them as losses. Instead, I'm discovering what new capabilities emerge when you're not trying to hold on to what's no longer sustainable. I'm no longer the father who can solve his son's problems, but I've become someone who can listen to his concerns with the wisdom that comes from having faced similar challenges. And I'm no longer the teacher who can keep up with every new development in education. But I've become someone who understands the timeless principles that remain constant despite changing methods and technologies. I'm no longer the young man who could run beside a bike for hours without getting winded, but I've become someone who knows when to step back and trust that the foundation has been properly built. And there's something deeply satisfying about this transition, something that feels like the natural progression of a life lived with intention and love. The lesson of the bicycle, it turns out, wasn't just about teaching Tommy to ride, and it was about learning to trust the process of growth and development. To understand that every relationship involves seasons of holding on and seasons of letting go. To recognize that the goal isn't to maintain control, but to create the conditions where others can thrive independently. This understanding has shaped not just my approach to parenting and grandparenting, but my approach to every relationship and every role I've had throughout my life. And it's influenced how I think about friendship, marriage, community involvement, and professional relationships. It's changed how I understand success and fulfillment and the legacy I want to leave. Most importantly, it's taught me that love isn't about holding on. It's about having the courage and wisdom to let go at exactly the right moment. Trusting that what you've built together will continue to support and strengthen the people you care about long after your direct involvement is no longer needed. Now, as I watch Tommy navigate the challenges of raising his own children, building his career, and contributing to his community, I feel the same kind of pride I felt that day when I realized he was riding his bike on his own. And it's the pride that comes from knowing you've been part of something larger than yourself, something that continues to create positive effects in the world independent of your ongoing involvement. And when I see Emma riding her bike confidently around the neighborhood, when I watch her tackle new challenges with the kind of determination and resilience that her father learned during those early lessons in our driveway, I understand that the real gift of that day wasn't just teaching Tommy to ride a bike. It was learning a principle that would continue to guide and strengthen our family for generations to come. My dear friends, I share this story with you because I believe it contains wisdom that becomes even more important as we age. And in our later years, we're constantly facing decisions about when to hold on and when to let go with our adult children, our grandchildren, our careers, our health, our independence, our roles in our communities. The temptation is often to hold on too tightly, to continue trying to control or fix or manage in ways that may no longer be appropriate or helpful. But the lesson of the bicycle reminds us that sometimes the most loving, most supportive thing we can do is to step back and trust the foundation we've helped build. This doesn't mean becoming passive or uninvolved. It means learning to offer our wisdom and support in ways that strengthen, rather than weaken the people we care about. It means understanding that our value doesn't depend on being needed, but on the positive effects of the love and guidance we've shared throughout our lives. Whether you're navigating relationships with adult children, grandchildren, community organizations, or simply the ongoing challenge of aging gracefully yourself, remember that the goal isn't to maintain control or prevent all difficulties, and the goal is to trust that the foundation of love, wisdom, and support you've built over decades will continue to serve and strengthen long after you've stepped back from active involvement. The bicycle was just a bicycle. But the lesson it taught about trust, growth, independence, and the true nature of love, that lesson continues to unfold and deepen with every passing year. It reminds me that the greatest gift we can give to anyone we love is not our constant presence or our solutions to their problems, but our faith in their ability to succeed on their own. And when they do succeed, when they find their balance, build their confidence, and discover they can navigate challenges independently, the pride we feel isn't diminished by our lack of direct involvement. And instead, it's magnified by the knowledge that we were wise enough to let go at exactly the right moment, brave enough to trust the process, and loving enough to celebrate their achievement as purely their own. That, my friends, is what I learned from a 6-year-old boy in a red bicycle on a spring morning 30 years ago. It's a lesson that has shaped every important relationship and decision since. And it's one that continues to guide me as I navigate the challenges and opportunities of growing older. The next time you find yourself in a situation where someone you love is struggling with a challenge you could easily solve for them, remember the lesson of the bicycle. Whether your intervention will build their confidence or undermine it, whether your help will strengthen their independence or create dependence. And remember that sometimes the greatest act of love is running alongside someone while they find their own balance, being ready to catch them if they fall, but having the wisdom and courage to let them discover what they're capable of achieving on their own. The pride you'll feel when they succeed, truly succeed, through their own effort and determination, will be deeper and more lasting than any satisfaction that comes from solving their problems for them. And the confidence they'll gain from that independent achievement will serve them through every challenge they face for the rest of their lives. And that's the gift of knowing when to let go. That's the wisdom that comes from understanding that love isn't about holding on. It's about having the courage to trust the foundation you have built together and the faith to believe that it will be strong enough to support whatever comes next. The bicycle lessons ended after a few weeks, but the learning continues every day. And 30 years later, as I watch another generation discover the joy of independent achievement, I'm reminded once again that the best things in life aren't the ones we can control, but the ones we're wise enough to trust will unfold in their own perfect time. Thank you for spending this time with me today, for allowing me to share this story that has meant so much to my understanding of love, parenting, and the art of living well. The older I get, the more I appreciate these moments of connection, these opportunities to reflect on the lessons that have shaped our lives and to consider how they might continue to guide us in the years ahead. If this story has resonated with you, if it's reminded you of your own experiences with learning when to hold on and when to let go, I'd love to hear about them. We're all still learning, still growing, still discovering new ways to love and support the people who matter most to us. And sometimes the most valuable wisdom comes from sharing our stories with others who understand that life's greatest lessons often come wrapped in the most ordinary moments. Remember, my friends, that every day offers new opportunities to practice the art of loving without controlling, supporting without creating dependence, and celebrating the success of others even when, especially when, that success comes from their own courage and determination rather than our direct involvement. The world needs more people who understand this balance, who know how to provide foundation without creating limitation, who can offer wisdom without insisting on control. In our later years, this may be one of the most important gifts we can give, not just to our own families, but to our communities and to the generations who will carry forward the values and principles we've spent our lives developing. So trust the foundation you have built, have faith in the love you've shared, and remember that sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to step back and let others discover their own. The bicycle was just the beginning. What the real journey is learning to apply that lesson with wisdom, courage, and grace throughout all the seasons of our lives. And that journey, my dear friends, is one that continues to offer new discoveries and deeper understanding with every passing year. Until we meet again, keep your hearts open to the lessons that life continues to offer. Trust the wisdom you've gained through your own experiences of learning and growing. And remember that the best is always yet to come for those who understand that love means knowing when to hold on and when to let go. The bicycle may be tucked away in the garage now, but the lesson it taught continues to ride on, carried forward by all the lives it has touched, all the confidence it has built, and all the love it has helped us learn to share. And that, my friends, is a legacy worth celebrating.